Hey there, Erin. How are you doing today?
Hi, Michael. I am doing well, and I am just getting over being outside, and it's so cold here. And I did a little bit of a conversion rate because I'm in Canada where we are in Celsius, so it's minus 19 degrees Celsius, which is about 5 degrees Fahrenheit for anyone who does that calculation. So, yeah, it's a little chilly up here.
That's cold. We're 30. I didn't pre-convert to Celsius for you, but we're 36 right now, but we just had a blizzard, so there's 15 inches of snow on the ground. I actually worked from home this morning because I couldn't get out of my driveway, but I wanted to get in here. I'm at my office now, and I wanted to get in here, but it's like a ghost town in my office complex. There's nobody here.
Yeah, I often say, if anyone is familiar with the part of the country that I'm in Alberta. We are the most resilient people there are no snow days where I come from. We persevere, but it also means that there are slower roads and sometimes proceed with caution when it's really icy out. But yeah.
I laughed when I was watching the news last night or this morning. I think it was last night when they were closing all the schools here. But then all the schools now say since the pandemic, because they all got used to doing virtual, they're like, oh, we're switching to virtual. And I was like, that's so unfair. When we were kids, we got to have the day off and go sleigh riding and go on to do whatever. But now they can still conduct school, which I just thought that was fun. Well, maybe it's not funny for the kids today, but I thought that was funny.
Well, okay, here is my take on this because I saw someone locally post a photo. They're a business owner. They have a storefront, and there was a lot of snow, not recently, but a few weeks ago, and they posted a picture of just like an older, I'm not sure if it was Edmonton or not, but just an older downtown image with the snow piled up. And it made me think, okay, 100 years ago, we didn't have big snow plows. We didn't have infrastructure to clean the streets, to keep going, to make sure that we could get to work and everything could be operating. But yet they survived 100 years ago. And so now we fast forward, and I think about some of the reasons. Yes, we want, if you need to get to the hospital, like there's emergency reasons, we want those roads cleared and get people to where they need to get to. But we also have this like pressure of get to work, get it done. You can't get to the office. That's okay. We've set up the computer so you can work in a hybrid way and just like keep going. And so I haven't fully formulated my thinking on this, but are we losing something by not having a quote unquote snow day?
Yeah, I think we are a little bit. That unexpected downtime is always such a nice little bonus surprise.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Well, listen, Erin, I am so happy that you decided to let me record one of our conversations. And with true to the title of this show, we don't know where this conversation's going to go, but let's have at it.
Yeah, let's go.
All right. I don't know where this conversation's going to go. Hey, everybody. I am here with Erin Davis, and Erin and I met in 2005, and we met at a conference, at the Evolve Leadership Conference in the beautiful Canadian Rockies. I was up there facilitating a workshop on leadership presence, and Erin was there also as an attendee like me, but also facilitated a wonderful workshop that really still has me thinking to this day. So Erin, say hello to everybody, and thanks again for being here.
Well, hello, everyone.
We've had some great conversations since we met, and I do have to tell you, Erin, that workshop was on harnessing the strengths within all generations. And that's something that's has been super on my mind. I've actually been working with my Learning and Development Pro Kelly on a workshop of my own about communicating among generations. So I was like at your workshop just like soaking up every single word. Is that something that you deliver, regularly? Is that one of your banner workshops, or was that just for the Evolve? Or tell me more about that.
Yeah, so it's a really good question because I would say it's not necessarily one of my banner workshops, but it's been a bit of an evolution over the last now year and a half where my work in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space has had a pretty big spotlight on it and whether or not, we're getting the outcomes that we were that are maybe we're getting the outcomes that benefit everyone. So there's been a lot of question marks around this acronym DEI. So in 2025, I really realized that I would have to shift my language depending on who my clients are and where I'm working. And I had a bit of a light bulb moment that talking about generational differences in the workplace and really as an extension of generational differences in our day-to-day lives is a beautiful entry point into the conversation to say, there's a difference, we are born in a certain generation. We have, I think about my grandmother who was born, if I'm remembering correctly, 1921. So would not have had TV, would not have had telephones in connection to how we have them today, little computers in our hands. The first time she ever created a Facebook account and tried to figure out that technology. So she lived through so much of that change. And so how I would have conversations with her would be very different than I have conversations with my children who were born in 2010 and 2013, almost 100 years later. Oh, I've never done the math on that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I know. It's shocking when you think about it that way, isn't it? I know.
But yet we interact with people who are different than us every single day, but our biases make us feel more comfortable with people who are like us. So whether or not we're born similar generation, we have similar experiences, we grew up in the same city, we, attended the same social events, whatever that is, we have a relation to that. And sometimes when we don't have that relation, it can feel difficult. So I felt it was a really timely way to start the conversation on generations in the workplace. And I think we all need to start thinking about this. All that's going through my head right now is this reference to 6'7". So if anyone listening knows what that is, and I just did this hand gesture, you are of a certain age, if you have any idea what that means. I am not of the age in which I'm allowed to do that, because when I do that, my kids are annoyed and they're like, Mom, that's so over. That's so
so
last
funny.
month.
Well, I'm way past the age then for that one. But it's so interesting because a lot of times what I see in my work as well, when I'm helping teams communicate and people communicate, and very often it is among different generations and everything, is we seem to freeze into this, well, they don't understand, or they didn't have it as hard as we had, or they're just not tech savvy. And there's all this they're just not, or they should, or they don't understand and everything, rather than this curiosity of, ooh, well, what's your perspective there? And tell me about your lived experience. It's just and I'm not comparing it to the same thing, Erin, but a lot of the work that I do with my clients is honoring different strengths and the beautiful differences that we all have. And it falls into the same bucket in some way, but when teams and families and people, just people, can take that step back from the defensiveness of the differences and talk and get curious about why we're thinking this way or believing this way, it can just transform conversations and relationships, in my experience.
Oh, I fundamentally believe it's the skill set that if everyone worked to refine, and I mean that for myself too, because my lived experience is what it is, and I learn what 6'7" is, and I try to take in these other data points. It doesn't mean that I fully understand it, but I'm learning, I'm curious, like you said. I think it helps me connect better to others who are different than me. And I think that in a world where we become so polarized and it's easier for our brains to go, this is the in group, this is the out group, us versus them. I don't believe the same things that you believe in, so then I'm not going to spend time with you. That's causing huge fractures. And so if we can build that skill set to say, I'm going to be curious, I'm going to ask questions. It doesn't mean I have to change what I fundamentally believe. But when I say, tell me more and help me understand, I can at least start to understand, oh, that's how you got to that place of that being your value and that being your belief. And so I now have empathy for where you are in your lived experience versus going, I can never have a conversation with you because you're too old or they're too young or whatever the differences that we choose to lean into. And so, yeah, I just believe whatever entry point is helpful for people to start that conversation, I want to find it so I can have that dialogue and that conversation with them.
Yeah, I like that term, the entry point for that, because that's often what's missed.
Right.
Is, we have our beliefs and our biases and all these other things, and then sometimes we miss that entry point, which is why we need people like you and the work that you do to help us see that and have that conversation. But even when you think about and not saying you specifically, but listeners, think about that specific breakdown you had with a colleague or a close friend or whatever, and when you really got curious and talked about it and found out the why or the perspective or what was really going on, it just shifted your whole perspective of what actually happened, or the story that you created in your brain from the limited information, or maybe it was a little bit of hurt, or maybe it was a little bit of betrayal or anger or whatever it is. We're really great machines at creating stories when we don't have, based on the information that's there. I guess that's how we're wired.
It is 100% how we're wired. And the gap in which we fill the stories that we tell ourselves by the passage of time gets bigger and bigger if we don't enter into that conversation. And so you're right, like emotions come into this work as well, which is hard because in a lot of work environments, and I would be hard pressed to say, like, I would say all work environments, we are so technically trained and we are so reliant on the hard data, meaning the numbers. It is harder for us to say and express ourselves and say, actually, what you said didn't land well with me, and that actually was kind of offensive. Can we have a conversation about that? And, maybe we don't say that's offensive. That I might say that because I just have no issues entering into the conversation, but say, like, that just didn't land well for me. Could we take some time to unpack that together? And just like opening up the conversation, that's another huge skill set of how can I ask an open-ended question? And you know this, right? Like we want to create the space of saying yes and
right,
not
totally.
saying no, you're wrong, I'm walking away. We don't solve anything when we do that.
Right. And the language you use in these moments matters too. I mean, you just said, I would say that, but maybe you wouldn't say that in a situation. And that's what reading the room and reading the situation is really about. Some of the most effective, difficult conversations, or when I've had to say, like what you're saying, that really didn't land well with me. And actually, that was pretty offensive to me. Instead of that language, sometimes I've done given them the benefit of the doubt because, to be honest with you, I don't think they meant to come off that way to me. And when you can communicate that, it just softens the defensiveness that they may have. So for example, you and I are in a conversation. You said something to me that I found off or offensive or whatever. And if I said, hey, Erin, can I talk to you about something? First of all, that approach is better than, Erin, you did this, so you're probably going to be more open to the conversation. And then if I said, I want to just tell you how something landed with me, and I don't think you meant for it to come across this way, but I just want to share with you that it did for me. That's just, I found that's a whole, because usually they're like, oh, no, that's not what I meant. I didn't mean to do that, or I didn't mean to hurt you, or I didn't mean to say something that could have been hurtful or could have been whatever it is, but they're more likely to have that conversation with you if you create the tone and the setting that's safer. I guess it's psychologically safer for them to have that conversation with you.
And in this example, I think the other piece of work, and I talk about how important it is, where we start is our own level of self-awareness. It's the one thing that's within our control, right? We live in a very complex world, and there's multiple factors that can influence what's going on for us. But if you say, I want to offer you some feedback, me being the recipient of that going, maybe I'm having a really bad day. So I'm like, Michael, today's not great, but let's schedule it for tomorrow. And yes, I can let that in and I'm willing to listen. And flexing that muscle, feedback is a gift, but that's not always how people receive it.
Right.
They can, internalize it and feel like it's a personal attack and I didn't do things properly. But when you practice it, you actually kind of go, oh, yeah, I could see how that possibly landed in not a great way for you. Thank you. I'm actually going to unprogram what's in my brain so that doesn't happen again and program it in a different way so then it lands well when I have that conversation with someone else.
Yeah, and I like that you use the word give the offer there, because that's just that's a gift when you can do that for someone in almost any communication, really. And that goes back to like when I was trying to be an actor when I was younger and got my theater training. That's one of the tenets of improvisation. You mentioned yes and, where you're carrying a conversation forward without a script. You're creating this scene, and if you say yes but or you say no, it just kills the scene. You're not carrying it forward. And that's a basic tenet of improv, is giving an offer. Give people something they can actually use to have a deeper conversation, rather than something that's going to shut things down.
Totally.
And those skills, that kind of, even though we're not going through our lives trying to make improv scenes, but those tenets of that kind of giving an offer so that you can, well, you know what it is for me? It's supporting each other. I always say to my clients when I do team coaching, it's like, how can we better set each other up for success? So simple. But if we're a little bit more intentional about how we say things, when we say things, reading someone's state. You said, like in that example you gave me, which was great, you know what, today's a rough day. I don't know if I can have that conversation today, but let's do it tomorrow. Being able to read all of that can just transform what could have been a disastrous conversation into one that's actually effective and impactful. I want to talk about what's lighting you up these days, Erin. What's sparking you up? What's something that you're feeling particularly passionate or excited about?
Well, we'll see how... Oh, this is hilarious. I was going to make a sports analogy, which is exactly what I want to talk about.
Okay.
This might be out of left field, but I am loving the momentum behind women's sports right now. And the creation of a different viewing audience and these younger generations being able to see themselves represented on this like pro athlete level. And that just makes me so excited for the future, because I think it's this juxtaposition of, for a long time, people would say, well, people won't watch women's sports. Like there's no market for it because we live in this, capitalistic structure. And of course, like we have to make money off of everything. That's, the confines of the conversation. But all of a sudden people are paying attention and they're excited, and we're coming off the Olympics. And so I think everyone sort of gets caught up in that. And we sort of see in this 2026 Olympics, we actually see, I think, pretty close gender parity in terms of the athletes participating, which we wouldn't have at the origin of the Olympics. And so, I get really jazzed about that because it actually, to me, says the world's changing.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. And I have actually, it's funny, I didn't really make mental note of that, but you're right. There has been more attention toward women's sports. And actually, speaking of women's sports, I've noticed you've taken up hockey. I saw you on LinkedIn. What's going on? What got you into that? It looks fun. Looks like you're enjoying it.
I absolutely love it. And I'm laughing because it is such a complicated answer. And I was not a lover of hockey, period.
Okay.
And I would say two components. One, I didn't play it growing up, so I don't really understand it. So when they're skating around on the ice, there used to be this old commercial that said, it was a joke, but they're like, we should highlight the puck in blue so people know where it is. And everyone's like, well, unless you're a true fan, you should already know where the puck is.
Right.
Like, that would actually be so helpful for me because I can't even see anything. I think they do it now, but it was a joke. And so I didn't have the frame of reference to understand hockey. But then I would say I kind of leaned into a bias, and I've got some data points on this. Hockey being a kind of toxic culture. And in the work that I do, that is not my favorite. And so I was like, I don't really want to learn more about this sport. That's not a place I want to spend time. But as I mentioned, I'm based in Edmonton. We are the home of the Edmonton Oilers. We, had Wayne Gretzky, the greatest, and they had won the Stanley Cup a few times. And now Connor McDavid plays for the Oilers, who would be deemed one of the greatest players right now. And so we've had back-to-back Stanley Cup playoffs in Edmonton the last 2 years, so 2024 and 2025. And so there's been this spirit of community created with people coming together to cheer on our city and cheer on the Oilers.
Love that.
And so I started to get curious, using that word again, about, okay, what is this hockey thing, because you kind of get on the bandwagon when everybody else is, cheering for your sports team in the city. But I have a pretty close friend who is trans, and I've done work with her, and she has received awful messages. She has chosen in her life to be a public advocate, and so with that comes these awful
Unfortunately,
messages. Unfortunately,
right.
yes.
Yep,
And so, it is some of what she has to deal with. But I noticed that she was going to like every Oilers game and, cheering on the Oilers with her partner in their jerseys. And I started to think about, well, if she can go to an Oilers game with the jersey on and no one asks questions, no one throws hate, she's automatically in. Why does it take her putting on this uniform to fit in? And so I really started to question like the power of inclusion through sports, because so many people watch sports, pay attention to sports, use sports analogies. I'm like rolling my eyes a little bit because, I don't use them all the time, but I own some of them. But it's actually a kind of universal language. So all these things are coming together. And then both of my kids started playing hockey 2 years ago. And so I had to learn the sport. They're out there on the ice. I want to cheer them on. Oh, that's what icing is. That's what offside is. And it's been so fascinating because I couldn't see those things before. The puck would do something and the whistle would blow and I'd be like, what's going on? So I started to learn, and the conclusion of the story, or at least where it is now, is there's an amazing program in our city that's for women over the age of 18 to learn to play hockey. And the arena is 10 minutes from my house, very convenient. It's at a standard time every week. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And we have an amazing coach. She is so great. And I went from not really even knowing how to skate. Like I own skates.
Yeah, that's me. I mean, I can skate, I think. It's been a long time, but yeah.
Yeah, and if you asked me to go skating, I'd say sure. Like I'd strap the skates on and I would tootle around the ice, but I wouldn't be like going fast or knowing how to stop, and I would use the boards to help me. So it wasn't a great starting place.
Right.
I can skate backwards. I've played in 2 games. It is amazing. And so now I get to start to tell these like leadership stories through the sport. And when you're on a team, we know how valuable how valuable that is. And you start to gain these skills of, it's not just all about me.
Yeah.
We're winning this together as a team. How are we going to do that? And so it has been a beautiful story of like, kind of having this negative bias towards a sport and like really getting caught up and saying, holy, I can now be a part of this. I didn't confess to this yet. As an elder millennial, I love using that.
Elder millennial. I never heard of that.
Millennial. Okay. For someone who's in their 40s who didn't know how to skate, is now playing hockey and like subbing on a team. I love it.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's awesome. And so, what are there any other specific lessons that you've learned from your journey with hockey so far?
The biggest one that always comes to mind is to try new things. I say in my workshops quite often, the older we get, the more unlearning we need to do. And I think this is a great example of that. I think that we can become very familiar with our day-to-days and think we know what we like and not necessarily take those chances. And so I think for me, I'm really proud of myself for going out there and trying something new. I think every time I'm on the ice, I know how valuable it is to have a good coach. So then I translate that as to have a good leader. And the translation of how you're being taught, or those conversations that you have with the person who's in charge, is I could have gone out on the ice and they could have been just sort of talking at the highest level about all these hockey terminologies and going really fast, and I would have been lost. But it was, let's meet people where they're at. Where are you? And we actually, quite often, people were at varying levels. So if you're a little bit more advanced, here's how you can run the drill. And if you're still at the beginner stage, here's how you run the drill. Yeah. And so everyone felt included. And I cannot stress that enough, because
Right.
I work so hard to create those inclusive spaces myself in any of my interactions.
Yeah.
But to get to go into a space and feel that, I don't know how many times
you're
in my
kind of giving
lifetime.
me chills a little bit with that, because
Yeah.
when you're talking about that, I'm thinking, you and I've talked about inclusion in the workplace a lot. I mean, that's kind of your jam.
Yes.
And it's something I believe I'm very passionate about it as well. But you just made me think of, like, because I'm sitting here thinking, oh, she did the hockey thing, and it's so great that she took the risk, and she did that, and I'm like, I've never been a group sports kind of person, I mean, I loved when I was in the theater and the cast became kind of a family, and there have been other things. Music gets me, and everything. But you know why it is? It's because the things that I've tried, I haven't felt included.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's 100% it. Because deep down, we want to get picked for the soccer team in the school field. We want to be part of the in-group. But we all have some experience in where we weren't picked. We were the last
Right.
one picked, or we weren't chosen. I think my kids are grown up beyond this, but Valentine's cards and choose your Valentine, or who are you gonna dance with at the school dance? I don't think they do school dances as much anymore, but I'm giving examples that, I think you and I both can relate to.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And how awful in those situations. Some people are in the in-group and they've got
That's
a dance
right.
partner and they received a Valentine, and then there's us on the other side who didn't get one. I have trauma. I won't tell the story because I've, it's when I was in grade 7, but it's everyone got paired up with a Valentine. Now I'm telling the story.
Tell
Everyone
the story if you're comfortable. Yeah.
We were a grade 7 class, definitely junior high, so very formative years. The teacher, assigned, and this is so ridiculous as well. We can unpack this afterwards, too.
Right.
A very gendered approach. Every boy got a girl, and you had to make them a Valentine. So instead of in elementary school for me, so these are the younger ages, you would give a Valentine to everyone in your class. You would just get the
Right.
class list, and everyone would get it, a bit more inclusive.
Yeah.
Junior high was well, not everybody wants to make a Valentine for everyone, so here's your name. So I baked homemade cookies for Brendan and, gave him the cookies. And what did Brendan give me? Nothing, because he forgot. Because he's a jerk.
Oh.
Right? But
To a middle schooler, that hurts.
right?
Yeah.
So we're kind of, that's an awful, now, my kids haven't had that experience in their junior high days, but I just think there's so much pressures, right? And that's just an example from our childhood in which we feel on the outside. And that forms us, and then we take that into organizations. And then there's moments where there's people who are chosen for things and people who aren't.
Right.
And then we're right back at it.
Yeah. And that stuff. Oh gosh. Yeah. You're making. See. Well, listen. I have a lazy eye. I don't see in 3D. Okay. So I don't have depth perception. So the way I wasn't included throughout my entire school life was I was never picked for any of the teams because I can't catch. So, and I can't hit a ball.
Right.
I got pretty good at tennis because the racket was big enough.
Got it. Okay. You
But,
directionally kind of knew
no,
where you're going. Yeah.
I was not the one you wanted on your team because I was basically going to miss the ball every time it was coming at me. So, but I guess that feeds into that feeling with these group environments that sometimes I have. Listen, I'm a confident guy, and I love being on the stage, and I love facilitating workshops, and I love performing. I love training. I love creating environments where people can feel safe to speak up and everything. But put me in a networking event or put me in a group class at the gym and everything, and I'll retreat to the back. And I wonder how much of that's left over from that feeling of not belonging in those group type settings. It's interesting. So
It is interesting. I suspect it's part of that. And then I think it's also the intentionality that's not given to the curation of these spaces. So there's a book by Priya Parker, The Art of Gathering, and really talking about how are we intentional when we bring people together. And I love your networking example because you and I have met. We're pretty, I talk with my hand. I don't have a theater background, but I definitely can be pretty out there, outgoing. And I love having a conversation, and I'll get pretty into it. I don't like going into a room with nobody that I know. Like, I'm learning some of the tips and tricks that you can sort of bring into your toolkit to help you in those circumstances. But I am the most awkward. I don't know what to talk to people about. And so, in the corner and shy. But I think it's also because you're putting people into a room with no parameters. Like,
Yeah,
help
that's
us,
true.
help us succeed.
Help us. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Well, the funny thing for me is I can coach somebody to function well in that environment, but then put me in, and I'll do it. I mean, I can make
Sure.
it happen,
Yeah.
but it's not innately comfortable to me at all. At
Yeah.
all.
But Michael, I really put the challenge out there to say, if you had a space that was curated well, where, everyone had a name tag, there was, 3 or 4 questions that were offered as conversation starters. Maybe we had tall tables that everyone could sort of participate at. We maybe had a few people in the room that were there to help these conversations function well. I'm just like kind of trying to imagine this in the moment. But if that was curated well, like I'm telling you, when you go into a space in which you feel welcomed, your guard is down.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Totally.
And why aren't we trying to do that more often in spaces in which we're interacting with one another?
Yeah, we need to do that more often. Yeah, you're right. That's such a great point.
Yeah.
Listen, we've talked about a lot of stuff today. I have one more question I'd love to ask you if you're ready for it.
I'm ready.
All right. What's one belief that you used to hold that you've changed your mind about or that you no longer hold? And I'm going to think of one too, because this just came up because we were talking about biases and we were talking about the way different generations think. And I'm always a proponent of, it's okay to have a belief, but it's also okay to change or to get more self-aware or to learn.
Yeah. So, I wish I had a 2-part answer for you, but what came up for me, because I've been doing this work for a really long time, and when I started, it really was around gender-based differences in the workplace and the underrepresentation of women in many leadership roles, and still fighting that good fight. But I think I had a belief that, well, even in that, I was just like, you have to work really hard, but there's like systems in the way. But that it was really the women that I had to do the work with, and that I had to find those champions, and often it didn't include men. And maybe unconsciously, I sort of thought about, well, they've already made it into these roles. They don't really want to help create the change. I just sort of filled that space with a lot of my own thoughts and didn't really spend the time to say, if we're going to create an inclusive world, who is on side with that? And really, it should be everyone who cares about it. And I think that has really evolved for me over time, and this belief that this work is for me to only do with the people who believe. It's for me to do the work with people who aren't sure of why this change matters. And yes, I can pull this quote because I actually read it earlier today, and it's from a very deep book called The Lemon Tree, and really talking about conflict in the Middle East. But this is at the beginning of the book, and I wrote it down because it just hits so deeply. The enemy is the only opportunity we have. And I just think about, if we keep doing the work with the people who get it or who are on our side, are we really going to see the change that we want to experience in this world?
No,
now, this is heavy. This is very heavy to think about it in terms of the enemy. But it does open up, and that shift in belief for me of, I want to connect with someone who holds a different value or different belief or a different idea than me, and help me understand, because it helps me to be more informed to do my work in a better way.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. And it's one of those things where, as this country and as this world has become so politically divided, and what social media has done to kind of silo people into, and serve them up just the information that's going to resonate with them in the moment. It's funny, this theme keeps coming up in almost all my conversations lately. But it's one of those things where I always think, I get that, I get what's happening, But these times are, and it kind of goes to that quote that you were talking about, these times aren't times to stop talking with each other, to stop being curious. If anything, we need to do more of that in these times where there are so many other forces, external forces, that are keeping us from having those types of dialogue, getting curious.
Yes.
Talking more, because sometimes people, I see people say, well, they're this and I'm never going to talk to them again, or I'm going to shut them out and everything, and I'm like, that's just not how we're going to get better at being humans with each other, and embracing the common things that we do all share.
Exactly.
Our humanity, love. I mean, we share all of those things. So yeah, it's you're right, that's heavy, but important.
Yeah.
So I think mine's not as heavy as yours, but I'm going to share it since
Okay, good.
it came up. Because I liked it when I come up with a question like that and I pose it in the moment. I don't like to just leave my guest with the only one answering. But I think the thing that I used to believe, that I've changed my mind on, I used to believe like you shouldn't give up. You should persevere. If you really want something, you just go and go and go and go and go. And I believe well, I don't necessarily believe that anymore, because I know that sometimes it's better to give up on something. Sometimes it's better to stop persevering something that's hurting you, or a relationship that's not, mutually beneficial, or, a goal that you set for yourself that is just not happening and you're sacrificing other things in order for that. So my lens on that has changed, but when I see people on LinkedIn pushing out these posts about never give up, always persevere, you have, I failed 675 times. Well, sure, I failed a lot, okay? But I also have learned to adjust, to pivot, to take a step back, to quit something that's not working, to open the room and the door for something else that could be working. And so I think that's my thing, is it's not an all or nothing thing. And I don't love when I see people giving the advice of you should persevere and never give up at all costs, because I don't think that's kind or right for every situation. Does that make sense?
It totally does. And it does have a cost on your own mental well-being, and that's hard to keep failing over and over and over again. And actually kind of have a similar philosophy. I like to use the term recalibrate, but I think when you retroactively look at your life, and at one point, I worked in corporate, so it's like, I'm going to climb the corporate ladder and I'm going to it's going to be this linear pathway. Whose life experience is linear? No one's.
Nobody.
And we're constantly recalibrating. So the greatest gift is to take in new data, new information, and then assess. And then maybe I do keep pursuing something because it's really meaningful to me. Right. Or I have this new information and
100%.
Actually, I'm gonna go do this thing.
Right. I'm going to use that word now. Thank you for giving me that as part of my vocabulary for this, because that's great. I love that, recalibrate. And that's what I've done. People say to me, oh, well, you've started businesses and you're so successful with that kind of... Well, it was a lot of recalibration, let me tell you. Where things ended up each time were never exactly where I thought they were going to go. But if I hadn't recalibrated, I probably would have failed. So, that recalibration, I love that. Erin, I always love talking to you. Thank you so much for joining me today, even though it was a very cold commute in for you to do that. So listen, tell everybody how they can learn more about you or contact you if they'd like to continue the conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Michael. I love our conversations as well. So for anyone looking to find me, pretty easy. You can go to my website, www.erindavisco.ca. And I'm a pretty big LinkedIn user, so you can also connect with me on there. And those are the two platforms that I would say I use the most frequently.
Wonderful. Thank you again so much for doing this today. I really enjoyed the conversation, my friend.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening today. If you like the show, please rate it on your favorite podcast platform. To learn more about your host, that's me, Michael Piperno, please visit my website at michaelpiperno.com. That website's in the show notes. See you next time.